And thank you for the music team. I didn't pick that song. I wish I had the foresight to pick that song, but it goes along perfectly with what I'm talking about.
Come on now.
So thank you for that.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? So thanks for coming tonight. This is probably the most fun place you could possibly have a talk. I look out and I see everyone that I know. It's fun to have a small campus. I feel like I know every one of you. I know I don't, but I see everyone around. I've had classes with you. A lot of them IR majors, the same major. And it's just fun to be in this environment, in this community. I hope you know how much of a privilege that is. My first year of college, I went to Southern, and it's probably 4 to 5 times bigger than Union. And the community is not the same. The community that you get at Union here, especially every year, just gets better. You get to know more and more, a higher percentage of people on campus, and it's just a blast. So thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me speak today. I'm really passionate about what I'm talking about today because when Milka asked me if I wanted to speak, of course I said yes without even thinking it through. And after I said yes, I knew there was only one thing that I could talk about, and that's purpose. Because for the past 4 years, I have been struggling with my purpose in life. And I've been asking questions of God about my purpose. I know a lot of other people are asking the same questions. So tonight, I just want to share with you the truths that I have found to be true. Truths that God believe that God has revealed to me. Truths that don't come from my mouth, but come straight from the Bible. So let's get started. What is our purpose? I'm going to answer 3 questions today. Very short. I'm going to answer, what is your purpose? I'm going to answer where you find your purpose at. And then I'm going to answer why you keep running from it.
Come on.
All right. Yeah. Good stuff, right? So the first question, where is our purpose? The Bible is a complicated book. You can really get into it. But it's meant for the simple, humble people who seek answers. And so let's go back to the beginning. Enough with the complicated theology. What does the Bible actually say? What does God tell you your purpose is? We find in the creation story, after God made Adam and Eve, he says 2 things to them right off the bat. It couldn't be more clear. The first thing he says is, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth. Have sex, have kids. It's not hard. We've got that down. The second commandment is not as apparent as that one. And it's something I think we struggle with a lot more. It says, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth, and subdue it.
Come on.
Subdue the earth. This was before the fall of man. What on earth could we have to subdue? I wanted to prepare for this. Oh, thank you. So I wanted to prepare for this talk, and so I didn't want to get anything wrong. And I actually looked up the Hebrew of this word, subdue, because subdue sounds a bit harsh, especially to a 21st century mind that likes everything to be peace and love and harmony. I think this is the view that we have of God, and that's true. I don't think that's the entire picture that God presents of himself in the Bible. So I looked up this word in Hebrew, and it means kabosh. Kabosh means, according to Strong's Concordance, to subdue. It's a good translation, a translation that most English Bibles use, but it means something else. The other definitions are to trample underfoot and to bring into bondage. Here I thought this word might get down translated into something more docile, something more agreeable, and I find that God calls us to trample underfoot, to bring the world into bondage. What a strange use of that word. I don't like that. I didn't like that. I've been wrestling with that for the past few years. Who is this God that creates a world that needs to be subdued? One of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story of Job. And in it, we find a man who is struggling with the meaning of life, with suffering. At the end of Job, the last 4 chapters, I think are some of the most beautiful chapters in the whole Bible. They're strong, passionate, emotional. In it, we see that God speaks to Job directly. If you remember, God also spoke to Elijah directly. Elijah was feeling lost and all alone, and God called him up on a mountain to speak to him. We read that God first had a fire go past the mouth of the cave, and God was not found in it, and then wind, and then an earthquake, and then a still, small voice is where Elijah heard his Savior. We do not see this picture of God in Job, however. In Job, it says God spoke to him through a storm. God is thundering down his answer to Job. Why? Because Job is asking the fundamental question of who God is. And how does God answer? Through his creation. And he walks us through it. In the last 4 chapters, he starts off slow. He starts off with laying the foundation of the world and the stars in the sky. And then he goes to things like the doe and her fawn in a field, a beautiful picture of the eagle soaring. God is feeling himself. I don't know how else to describe it but cocky. Please read those last few chapters of Job. They're amazing. And then as God is slowing down, Job is probably thinking the monologue has come to an end. And then God hits him with Leviathan. There's this old show called Columbo. It's in the 70s. Most of you probably don't know it. Okay, some of you do. In it, the detective, Columbo, at the end of every episode, he has this thing that he does. It's like his stick. He's at the end of every episode, he questions the criminal. And as he's questioning the criminal, he's asking him questions. And the criminal is responding in a well-constructed lie. A made-up story about what he believes, or what he wants Columbo to believe, the events that took place actually are. And Columbo's eating it up. He's like, all right, cool. This is how it is. Understand. Sorry to bother you. And then he walks away. And then, as he walks away, at the end of every episode, he says, just one more thing, his catchphrase. And he turns around and he says, the phrase, the statement that blows the case wide open. Friends, I believe this is what God does in Job. God is slowing down. He's going his monologue. And then he turns around and says one more thing. Leviathan, this beast. I don't want to say dragon. I would never say anything as audacious as that up front, in front of Adventists. But please read the last chapter of Job, or the second to last chapter of Job. It says it spends the aspect of Leviathan that it spends the most time talking about is it breathing fire. It says that it's a beast that knows no fear. It calls it unsubduable. Why is God proud of this creation, and why does he call us to subdue it? I believe, friends, this is what God calls us to. You see in the Old Testament, God calling David to Goliath, to Abraham to the wilderness. But the Old Testament is blood and guts and gore and battle and blood. But the New Testament is different. It's peace and harmony. We see a loving creator. They're different, but the New Testament might be worse. Jesus didn't live till 30. Peter died upside down on a cross, and John the Revelator revelated on a deserted island. There is no inconsistencies with God. God calls us all to the same thing. I loved the song choice that Campus Ministries had for this event, Another in the Fire. Please notice, where did those Meshach and Abednego, where did they find God at? In the fire. That's also where you're going to find God. So that was our first question. What does God call you to? Apparently to subdue the earth, his own creation. A call to fight, a call to battle, a call to action. So where is his calling found? I am an IRR major. Okay, I won't do that again. I am an IRR major, and IRR majors have a certain tick. We like to do too much. And I remember, so every year a class of IRR majors go to Africa. And before we went last year, I went last year, and before we went, we were going to take a class called Global Health. And it's a 3-credit class. So I said, okay, cool. The textbook was about 1,000 pages long. Okay, cool. How long do we have to take this class? And Andrew goes, you're going to take it in a week. All right. So during that week, I spent 16 hours studying global health for 6 days straight. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was challenging though. And I found myself at the end of that week heavy. You know the feeling. It feels like a weight on your shoulders. You can't breathe. I remember sitting in the calf at the end of that week, and I started to tear up, and I didn't understand why. It wasn't self-apparent to me. And I went to my room and cried, and all I could think about was all that's going wrong in this world. It was an overload. Where does God call us to? To that. We like to say this earth is not our home. That is true. We were not made for sin. But I think we take that statement too far. This earth is not our home, but we were made on it. We were made from it, from the dust of the ground. God created us and told us to live on it, to leave the Garden of Eden and go out into the world, not to stay in safety. So the final question that we're going to answer tonight. What are you called to? Apparently to subdue the earth. A call to action. Where is that found? That purpose is found in the world. I believe that purpose is found where your passions align with the world's needs. The second part of that is easy. The world's needs. The world needs people everywhere to fulfill their calling. Please hear me. The world does not need more doctors or nurses, healthcare professionals, social workers. The world does not need more pastors.
Come on now.
What the world needs is you to find your purpose and the passions and the gifts that God has given you. That's where you're called. And that is the biggest indicator of where you should go next. So for our final question, why do you run from it? This one caught me by surprise. I wasn't planning on having this in my talk, but about a week ago, I reread a story in the Bible for the first time. I'd read it before, sure, but not like this. It's the story of the Israelites. The Israelites are us, by the way, in case you read the Bible and think harshly of them. The same backstabbing, deceitful, complainers.
Well,
That's us.
come on now.
That's you. And we see in the story of the Israelites, when they're in Egypt, in bondage, in slavery, God calls them out of that and into freedom. Tonight, that is what God is calling you to. And through that experience, God shows the Israelites who he is, his power, through the plagues of Egypt, through destroying Pharaoh's army, to giving them a fire by night and a cloud of shade by day. And just like us, the Israelites wanted to go back. It's a strange story, but we read it right after the Israelites get out of Egypt, out of slavery, into freedom, into the purpose that God called them to take the land of Canaan. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They complained to Moses and to God. Why have you come? Why have you brought us out here? I think this is because the Israelites didn't think that they were enough. I don't think that you think that you're enough. I don't think that I think that I'm enough all the time for God's calling in my life. Because like the Israelites, God calls us to a purpose that's bigger than a year, bigger than our lifetimes even. God called the Israelites to take a promised land that already had inhabitants. They would have to go to war, and they knew that. They would have to fight. Men would have to die. Mothers would become widows and children without fathers, and they didn't want it. I think this thing that Satan is most afraid of is us finding our purpose in Christ. There are two things that you should look at in your life to understand what your purpose is. First is what your passions and gifts reveal about yourself. That's God-given. That's nothing in and of ourselves that we have that can do that. The second is, where do you feel attacked? I promise you, Satan's attacks are never random. Satan knows what he's doing. Think back into your life. Think back to what you struggle with, what you've had family issues with, what Satan has been telling you about yourself. That is what Satan wants to keep you from the most. For me, it's been good enough. If I can, friends, I'm going to be vulnerable tonight. I wasn't planning on telling this story, but I will, because I feel like it. Because I believe in this talk so much. That purpose has changed my life so much that I would hate that my lack of willingness would keep you from the truth. Once upon a time, I was dating a girl. One Sabbath, her family came down. I was going to meet them for the first time. A big deal. I was nervous, excited. The night before, I had a dream that I raped a girl. Satan was telling me that that's who I was, that I wasn't good enough, that I'm not qualified. Please, believe me, Satan's attacks are never random. He knows what you're destined for. He knows what God's calling you to, and he doesn't want you to fulfill it. Look at what your purpose, to find your purpose, look at what your passions are. Look at what your gifts are, and find out where Satan doesn't want you to be. Finally, I want to give a call to action, because that's what you see God doing all throughout the Bible. God is never a God that calls people to live on a mountain by themselves. God calls people out of Eden into the world to subdue it. I want you to do this. Tonight, after this talk, before you go to bed or tomorrow morning, I want you to ask God where he's leading you. If you don't mean it, then don't say it. I believe it's better to be cold than lukewarm. This is one of the scariest prayers you can ever ask. To ask God where. For me tonight, it was to stand up in front of 100 people and give a talk like I'd never done before. That was the fire for me this week. That's where I found God this week. Where is God calling you? I promise you, it's not safe. I promise you that you're not going to like it. It will be uncomfortable, but I also promise that it will be good. A friend a couple hours ago sent me a story in the Bible that I want to share. I think it applies very neatly to what we're talking about here. In Deuteronomy 20, we find, before the Israelites are set off into battle, this is what the Lord tells them. When you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid of them. Because the Lord, your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, that is bondage, slavery, will be with you. When you are about to go into battle, the priest will come forward and address the army. He will say, "Hear, Israel." That's us, remember? "Hear, Union College. Today you are going into battle against your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. Do not panic or be terrified by them. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies and to give you the victory." One of my favorite quotes of all time, to paraphrase C.S. Lewis, God is not good. God is not safe, but he is good. Thank you.